Now let's look at these market interdependencies between two goods that are complements. Let's consider corn and butter. Okay, so we're going to have these two graphs again. The graph on the left is going to be the market for corn, and the graph on the right is going to be the market for butter. So this inverse demand for corn correctly reflects the price of butter, and vice versa. This inverse demand for butter correctly reflects the price of corn. So we start in general equilibrium. Now we're going to have this shock to demand in the corn market because of this new ethanol law. Okay. So that's going to increase demand for corn, which is going to shift the inverse demand curve further to the right, leading to a higher price of corn and a higher quantity of corn. And if the price of corn goes up, causing fewer people to buy corn for food consumption, that might mean that the demand for butter would go down because of it. Okay? So when the price of corn goes up due to this law change, that's going to shift the inverse demand curve for butter to the left, which actually lowers the price of butter. Now, let's go back to the market for corn. Remember, this inverse demand curve for corn reflected the law change, but still was assuming the original higher price of butter. If we consider the lowering of the price for butter, that's going to increase the demand for corn further, right? If you walk into the supermarket and see butter is on sale, it's at a low price, you might think, maybe I'll buy some butter and some corn on the cob to go with it. The idea here is that the dropping in the price of a complement is going to raise demand for corn, shift it further to the right. Okay. So what's actually really interesting here is that just like when you had two markets for goods that were substitutes, when you have two markets for goods that are complements, you get the same impact in the original market that you were looking at in the market for corn. If you account for the interdependencies between the market for corn and the market for some complementary good, it's going to imply an even larger increase in both the price of corn and the quantity of corn transacted in the market. So it's actually rather interesting that for either of these types of goods, these market interdependencies matter. And if you're looking only at demand side links, you actually get the same impact in the original market, although you do get different impacts in the other market, right? In the market for butter, an increase in demand for corn actually is going to reduce both the price and the quantity transacted. Whereas in the market for wheat, which is a substitute, an increase in the demand for corn is actually going to increase both the price and the quantity of wheat. Okay. Now, it's not only the case that there might be demand side linkages, but there could also be supply side linkages. Right? A farmer could either grow corn or they could grow wheat. If the price of corn goes up, some farmers who were previously making wheat might switch some of their crop from wheat to corn. Okay, so let's go back to the initial set of graphs where we have the market for corn on the left and the market for wheat on the right. Okay, we're going to again assume that the market starts in general equilibrium, and we're going to still assume the same initial shock, which is a shock to demand. But for the rest of this problem, we're going to ignore any demand side linkages and only think about supply side linkages. Okay? The idea is that, again, as the price of corn goes up, some farmers might switch some of their crop space from wheat to corn to try and get these higher prices. That's going to shift the supply of wheat to the left, which is going to have two impacts. It's going to result in less wheat transacted in the market, but it's going to raise the price of wheat. Now, I want to be very clear here. This inverse supply of corn was the inverse supply of corn assuming the original price of wheat. This inverse supply of corn is no longer the correct inverse supply curve. Rather, as the price of wheat goes up, some farmers might switch away from corn production back to wheat, which is going to reduce the supply of corn, shifting it to the left, which will result in a higher price but lower quantity of corn than we would predict if we were to ignore these supply side interdependencies between the two markets. So with supply side links, we saw that there was an even larger impact on prices, but a smaller impact on quantities than would be implied if these interdependencies between the two markets were ignored.